My wife and I are in the messy middle, and neither of us grew up with much. How can we teach our young kids to be good stewards and have an abundance mindset? Thanks.
Yeah, so I think educating our kids. So a lot of financial mutants have this story. Hey, I grew up in humble beginnings. And because of things that have happened in my life, because of people that have supported me, because of work that I've put in, I've ended up in a better financial situation than I started in. And with that better financial situation I started in, my kids are now experiencing a different childhood than I experienced. And perhaps some of the things that made me unique and equipped me to be able to attack the world the way that I have was some of those experiences I had when I was a kid. And now my kids aren't having them. So what do? My wife and I talk about this. It seems like on a weekly or monthly basis, is how do we let our kids recognize that the way that we live and the opportunities we have might not be the norm, that might not be what everyone else is experiencing, and how do we get them to understand the value of making sound financial decisions? I talk about this all the time. You know, my kids are pretty young. I've got an almost 10-year-old, an almost 8-year-old, and I have a 2-year-old. So they're at like various stages of their understanding of finances. But one thing that we start very early on for our kids is anytime money comes, I got home yesterday, lemonade stand. It was awesome. It was so awesome. You would not believe like the guilt that these neighbors will just.
Oh no, I know.
And they started tipping my kids.
Oh my gosh,
it was unbelievable.
I've gotten so many lemonades I've thrown out because they have grass in them or other stuff.
But
because
you still pay
the kids
for
are charging you. And by the way, they charge you like $2 for these things. So okay, I think that's good.
So
anyways, my kids
really hit
did
us hard.
My 2 little girls, they did this yesterday. It was awesome. They made like $20 in like 15-20 minutes. It was wild.
You can only get away with that for a few times.
Exactly.
Right? That's why I tell them, don't do this too often because then people are going to just be like, yeah, there they are. Shaking us down.
So I had this conversation as they're both like counting out the money. But it was actually an odd number. It's $21. I'm like, Dad, it was 21. How do we split this up? We're like, well, me and Mom supplied the supplies. You give us $1, then y'all can split the rest. That was how we split that up. And I said, well, anytime money comes into your possession, what do you do with it? And they know, it's almost like rote memory. This, anytime we get money, we give, we save, we spend. We give, we save, we spend. We give, we save, we spend. So if you can begin even instilling like that kind of mindset in your kid as they begin to progress and as they begin to age, then you can start diving into each one of those. Okay, now we're going to save. How do we save? And that's something that you did with your daughter, was like actually diving in. How do I actually save?
I wrote down a few quick things because I've got older kids. I've got one that, man, it would get me all teared up if we think about how close she is to graduating from college.
A kid anymore.
And we just got back from spring break, and it's nice when you're older children who initially don't want to go on the trip, but then they find out where you're going, and you're like, yes, I was able to bribe them to go one more year. Because this stuff, you're not guaranteed those memories, and it's just, you get so sentimental the older you get. Here's what I wrote down. I wrote down 3 key things, and the last one is prime the pump, so I'll talk about that. But scarcity, I first want to tell you, I think one of the things that I always struggle with, families who grew up with not much, and now you have more abundance in your life, and I see it with my neighbors and others, is that you're not doing a good job of adding some scarcity in your children's life so they know how to handle resources or even understand how hard it is to come into resources. Because I think sometimes if you grow up in abundance, sometimes that can get lost. So I always, on the first car, my daughter paid for half of her first car.
That's awesome.
And then, now we upgraded her once she got to college, but it was still something that was a used, very reasonable, but she drove it all through high school. And I thought that was a good thing to let her have some skin in the game on that first purchase. And then the other thing that I tell people, you don't have to be scarce on the memories, though. I think it's okay if you're taking your kids on good trips and memories. Those things will serve them well. But you don't have to give them the nicest cars. You don't have to make sure clothes. That you just give them $50, $20, $100 anytime they ask. It's okay to add scarcity in their life. The other thing I think you ought to do is, and this is my opinion, but I've just got a lot of experience seeing people who come from these backgrounds. I could look at Bo, I look at myself, is make them work. As soon as my daughter got to 14, 15, and then 16, once she was definitely mobile with a vehicle, I like kids working fast food. I mean, there are so many benefits to getting your kids working in the public. First of all, they need to learn the value of working. Your labor turns into money. There is something very valuable about understanding and appreciating that you work hard, you make money, and it's a good thing. So when my daughter worked at Chick-fil-A for those years, it was great because you realize the public's crazy and that but you've got to still put on a happy face and be good with people. And those EQ skills will serve you for years to come. I remember there's some crazy stories I could tell you from working the drive-through at the Hardee's in my hometown. I mean, it's just, you get a lot of experience. I know you've told me all kind of stories when you were a server at Chili's.
Yep, absolutely.
All through those years.
Madness.
So make your kids work. I think it's important. I understand. Now, Bo, you might have a different point because I know you were an athlete all through that. And I think that's a whole nother work ethic that you can also give a lot of credit to. And then the last point, what Bo was talking about, I do believe you should prime the pump, meaning that you want to, as you're trying to create good stewards, but also good productive adults, you need them to understand that their money actually is not just for consumption. I love that Bo talks about the give, save, spend. But I think a lot of people, even beyond the giving and the saving, they get too carried away with the spending and actually never do the saving. So what I've done is, as soon as my daughter started working, I said, you know what, we're going to open up a custodial Roth IRA and I will match it dollar for dollar. Now you have to stay within the limits of what you can't fund a Roth IRA for more than your earned income, but that ties into the whole, let them spend some of the money.
Absolutely.
And I was amazed at how it really was priming the pump of an engine, or pouring gas in the carburetor, because it was just amazing to watch how, she would get some additional money and she'd be like, hey, does that offer still stand that I can make a contribution to my Roth IRA? And I'll be like, yeah, for sure. And I've watched, and what's also really cool is when you start getting those monthly statements and you compare how many hours she would have to work for what the money made just in that past month. And then if you want to, go to moneyguy.com/resources. Go look at our wealth multiplier tool as well as our downloads. That stuff is so valuable because, you get an 18-year-old, where I'm doing this off memory, which is a mistake. You should never do math off memory. But isn't it like $108 or big, somewhere around there? It's but for a 20-year-old, it's 88 times over, and it's so incredible if you can use. And by the way, if you go to moneyguy.com/resources, we actually have the wealth multiplier all the way down to 1 year of age. So if you want to get the grandparents all excited about your kids and making them, have a pot of money at some point that are saving for college, that's a great resource too.